What's going on, baseball fans? Jeremy Laracuente here for the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Now, as you know, there is a lockout that has been initiated by the MLB owners. So as of right now, the 2022 Major League Baseball season is in jeopardy. Now, while we are still several months away from that being a legitimate possibility to lose games, there's still a lot to go on and a lot to discuss. So I've read all of the articles available around ESPN, The Athletic, and MLB.com on these particular labor issues, and I'm going to be bringing you my thoughts. But before we get into it, make sure if you haven't already done so, you smash that subscribe button down below, as it does a huge service for us here as we continue to grow this baseball fan community. Now, I'm going to begin by reading Rob Manfred, the Commissioner of Baseball, his letter to baseball fans. And then I want to hear your thoughts on the letter down in the comment section below. If you've already read it, let me know that now. It begins, "To our fans, I first want to thank you for your continued support of the great game of baseball. This past season, we were reminded of how the national pastime can bring us together and restore hope despite the difficult challenges of a global pandemic. As we begin to emerge from one of the darkest periods in our history, our ballparks were filled with fans, the games were filled with excitement, and millions of families felt the joy of watching baseball together. That is why I'm so disappointed about the situation in which our game finds itself today. Despite the league's best effort to make a deal with the Players Association, we were unable to extend our 26-year-long history of labor peace and come to an agreement with the MLBPA before the current CBA expired. Therefore, we have been forced to commence a lockout of Major League Players, effective at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time on December 2nd. I want to explain to you how we got here and why we have to take this action today. Simply put, we believe that an off-season lockout is the best mechanism to protect the 2022 season. We hope that the lockout will jumpstart the negotiations and get us to an agreement that will allow the season to start on time." This is the big quote that was used in one of the articles in The Athletic. This defensive lockout was necessary because the Players Association's vision for Major League Baseball would threaten the ability for most teams to be able to be competitive. It's simply not a viable option. From the beginning, the MLBPA has been unwilling to move from their starting position, compromise, or collaborate on solutions. When we began negotiations over the new agreement, the Players Association already had a contract that they wouldn't trade for any other sports. Baseball players have no salary cap and are not subjected to maximum lengths of dollars on the contract. In fact, only MLB has guaranteed contracts that run 10 or more years in excess of $300 million. We have not proposed anything that would change these fundamentals. While we have heard repeatedly that free agency is, quote, broken, in the month of November, $1.7 billion was committed to free agents, smashing the prior record by nearly 4 times. By the end of the season, clubs will have committed more money to players than in any offseason in Major League Baseball history. We work hard to find compromise, while making the system even better for players by addressing concerns raised by the Players Association. We offer to establish a minimum payroll for all clubs to meet for the first time in baseball history, to allow the majority of players to reach free agency earlier through an age-based system that would eliminate any claims of service time manipulation, and to increase compensation for young players, including increasing the minimum salary. When negotiations lacked momentum, we tried to create some offering to accept the universal designated hitter, to create a new draft system using a lottery similar to other leagues, and to increase the competitive balance tax threshold that affects only a small number of teams. We have had challenges before with respect to making labor agreements and have overcome those challenges every single time during my tenure. Regrettably, it appears the Players Association came to the bargaining table with a strategy of confrontation over compromise. They never wavered from collectively the most extreme set of proposals in their history. including significant cuts to the revenue sharing system, a weakening of the competitive balance tax, and shortening the period of time that players play for their teams. All of these changes would make our game less competitive, not more. To be clear, this hard but important step does not necessarily mean games will be canceled. In fact, we are taking this step now because it accelerates the urgency for an agreement with as much runway as possible to avoid doing damage to the 2022 season. Delaying this process further would only put spring training, opening day, and the rest of the season at further risk. And we cannot allow an expired agreement to again cause an in-season strike and missed World Series like we experienced in 1994. We all owe you, our fans, better than that. Today is a difficult day for baseball, but as I have said all year, there is a path to a fair agreement and we will find it. I do not doubt the league and the players share a fundamental appreciation for the game and a commitment to its fans. I remain optimistic that both sides will seize the opportunity to work together, to grow, protect, and strengthen the game we love. MLB is ready to work around the clock to meet the goal. I urge the Players Association to join us at the table. Now, there's a few things in this letter to baseball fans that really stand out. First and foremost to me is the tone in which Rob Manfred has penned this letter. And it's clearly making the Baseball Players Association the bad guy. He's directly calling them and saying that they're the ones not willing to compromise, not willing to meet them halfway. However, when you look deeper into the issues, into what has been going on between MLB and the MLBPA, most notably the owners, who the commissioner is negotiating on behalf of, there is a unwillingness on both sides. The players felt that in the last round of the CBA negotiations in 2016 that they severely lost. There's been growing dissension and dissatisfaction amongst the players in these negotiations. And even the compromises that we saw during the shortened COVID 2020 season would really infuriate the players. Because while they were trying to get back to the game, get back on the field and be able to play a season in 2020, the owners were the ones that were unwilling to relent, only getting a 60-game season despite the players being ready and willing to play more. One of the other issues that I have with this letter that Rob Manfred penned is the fact that he's trying to make it seem as if the league is giving all of these concessions to the players to be able to make this 2022 season and beyond happen. Things like creating a new draft system using a lottery similar to other leagues. Well, while that may work, the way that baseball is going about it is not exactly the right way. Yes, a lottery makes it a bit more competitive for other teams. However, they only want to give the bottom three a lottery slotting. This will not work for Major League Baseball. What the league is proposing, what the Players Association is proposing, looks very different. The players are requesting a new system for the draft. Yes, both sides are asking for a new system and saying that they're willing to do a new system. How they're going about it is very different. The Players Association is looking for what they are calling a 60-40 system, where 60% is based on your prior season record, and 40% is based on other mitigating factors, including market size. This would disincentivize teams from being able to tank. This is one of the things that the Players Association is looking to eliminate. Teams tanking is one of the worst things that has happened to Major League Baseball. Yes, it's worked out for two notable instances, the 2016 Chicago Cubs and the 2017 Houston Astros. However, we've seen a large group of teams go down this path towards tanking, cutting costs on their payroll to the bare bones minimum in order to try to secure a better outcome in the draft. Draft picks are highly valued in today's game because through the use of analytics, we've seen that younger players are much more valued over veteran players. While the veteran players are able to give you a now type of production, the future is where all teams are looking towards, and rightfully so. if you're looking to build a contender. However, we have several teams that have not been contending for the last 5 years and won't be over these next coming couple of seasons either. Manfred also points out about the ability to add the universal DH, as if it's some sort of concession to the Players Association. Now, while the universal DH would, in theory, help not only boost the production of the offense and also provide another 15 job opportunities for designated hitters in the National League, this is almost as if he's trying to throw the Players Association the bone, trying to make it seem as if they're doing so much and offering so much to the Players Association. They're really not. The universal DH should already be implemented, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. It's not a secret. If you've paid attention to the Baseball Banter Broadcast, I absolutely believe and love the idea of a universal DH. The idea of pitchers hitting is an absolute joke in my opinion and needed to be done with several decades ago. But the idea that giving the universal DH as some sort of concession in this new collective bargaining agreement is absolutely a joke. That works for both sides. That should already be included, not as a bonus piece that the owners are offering to the association. Now, Manfred also says in this letter that there's offering an increase in the collective bargaining tax, aka the luxury tax, aka the salary cap. Now, what is not being said in his letter, as he so eloquently tried to put it, is the fact that they're lowering the tax of what the limit is, to then be able to penalize teams even further, basically lowering the overall value of players' contracts. The other thing that they're offering is putting a floor. This is, how did he put it? So, he put it, and I quote, "We offered to establish a minimum payroll for clubs to meet for the first time in baseball history." Yes, a salary floor of $100 million sounds like a good idea. However, when you have a salary floor, it also comes with a salary cap. But baseball's been operating under a salary cap. It's been called the luxury tax threshold. In that luxury tax threshold, or the competitive balance tax, owners and teams have been functioning as if that's a hard line cap they don't want to go over. Now, as a Yankee fan, year in and year out over the last several years, we've heard about getting under the luxury tax. Getting under the luxury tax. Not spending on free agents that could clearly help the team and push the team forward. In the $1.7 billion that has been already offered in the month of November that Rob Manfred is claiming so boldly about, the Yankees remained quiet. Why? Because they wanted to remain under the tax, to see what the new collective bargaining tax would look like before they decide to spend money to potentially increase themselves over that limit. Now, obviously, every team functions different. Every owners function different. I've made it no secret. The fact that George Steinbrenner is no longer alive has been the worst thing to happen to the New York Yankees. Yes, Steinbrenner would sometimes go a bit overboard when it came to pushing and signing free agents that were way past their prime. But having an owner like George Steinbrenner, an owner like Mike Ilitch from the Tigers, these owners wanted to win. And they would not let a simple tax penalty stop them from trying to do so. However, and this is one of the main things across the board in the evangelic articles about this lockout on The Athletic, is the groupthink that has spawned in Major League Baseball. Many of the executives now across Major League Baseball came through the commissioner's office or from Ivy League programs, and they have this idea, and it can work. When baseball and analytics come together, it can be done very beautifully. But one of the downsides to it is everyone is thinking the same way about the same type of players. Players that are 30 years and above are no longer viewed as players that can help your team long term. They're now viewed as potential liabilities. Therefore, they're not being paid the same way that they used to. Now, one of the other things that Manfred discussed was the fact that there would be an age-based system to reach free agency. While that sounds like, hey, this could help some players get to free agency earlier who came up later in their career, later age-wise in terms of the baseball timeline that they have, and maximize them getting there. It also penalizes the players who are your phenoms, your young dynamic talents, guys like Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, Juan Soto, that came up younger, would now be penalized and kept in the organization longer. Manfred also said that the proposals that the Players Association is requesting would make the game less competitive, not more competitive. That, and let me go back to the main quote from earlier in the main quote from earlier in the article. The Players Association's vision for Major League Baseball would threaten the ability of most teams to be competitive. Here's the deal. Baseball teams are making a plethora of money. Even small market teams are having such an increase in revenue between TV deals, ticket sales, merchandise sales. Everything is going up in terms of the money that Major League Baseball is making. And in the 2016 and the 2011 collective bargaining agreements, the owners were saying that they were going to reinvest this money in their team, in player development, in free agency to be competitive. They lied. Period, point blank. And what the Players Association is now requesting is to actually bring competitiveness back into the game. The limiting of revenue sharing between owners is so that teams that just like to pocket that cash, small market teams like the Pirates, the Royals, the Brewers, will not be able to just hoard that money in their bank accounts. They have to reinvest it in their players. However, the MLB owners are unwilling to move on that. They're also unwilling to move on the idea of getting to free agency earlier with a less service time requirement. They also are unwilling to move on players getting to arbitration earlier. So at the way that the current system is set up, players can reach arbitration after 3 years of service time. The players are requesting 2. Doesn't seem like a grand gesture in terms of knocking off 1 year of service time to be able to reach arbitration. However, arbitration is where players begin to start earning the money that they deserve to make earlier in their career. So by extending that an extra year, teams remain in control of those players for an extra year. The other thing that players are trying to eliminate is the service time manipulation. That's what Manfred was talking about with the idea of an age-based system to reach free agency. Well, if you reach free agency at the age of 29, but you've been called up since you were 20 years old, that player has now been under that team's control for 9 years. The current system has it at 6. The players are trying to reach it earlier, so that a player that gets brought up at 20 years old can hit free agency at 24, 25 years old, as opposed to 26, 27. This is where Major League Baseball and the Players Association are very, very far apart on. This is where Major League Baseball and the Players Association are likely not going to find themselves on level playing field when it comes to the collective bargaining table. Major League Baseball agreed to raise the competitive balance tax in the last round of negotiations in 2016. However, those increases were an absolute joke. To go up from 195 to 200 to 206 to 210 to 214, which was the intended plan, does not equate to the same amount of money that these teams are making and earning. Payroll has gone down across Major League Baseball 6%, 6.4 or 6.5%, I believe, from 2017. It's down, the median average is down 30% since 2015. Yet, the team's revenue are increasing several fold. Now, in response to Rob Manfred's letter to baseball fans, the head of the MLB Players Association, Tony Clark, had this to say. The lockout was the owner's choice, plain and simple. Specifically calculated to pressure players into relinquishing rights and benefits and abandoning good faith bargaining proposals that will benefit not just players, but the game and the industry as a whole. This drastic and unnecessary measure will not affect the players' resolve to reach a fair contract. We remain committed to negotiating a new collective bargaining agreement that enhances competition, improves the product for our fans, and advances the rights and benefits of our membership. Now, one of the things that the union was also offering to make baseball even more money that was somehow magically ignored and not spoken about by the commissioner who's trying to increase the game was the fact that the players offered an expanded postseason, something that would bring in more TV revenue, more commercial ads, and things of that nature. Right? More TV, more playoffs, means more commercial, more money for baseball. They also offered to have patches added on the uniforms, similar to how the NBA has. This increased exposure offers sponsorship deals, more revenue for Major League Baseball. This offer was said to be, by someone's knowledge of the union's proposal, worth hundreds of millions of dollars combined. Yet somehow, baseball has ignored it. Major League Baseball, the owners and the commissioner have somehow managed to slip that detail by in this letter to baseball fans. So where do we go from here? Everything that I've discussed so far has been the sides of the commissioner's perspective, skewed perspective in my opinion, and the players' fight to get back to even with the owners. The biggest issue that I have with this work stoppage, with this lockout, is the fact that the fans are going to be the ones that pay the ultimate price. I do side more so with the players on this, because I think that what the players are fighting for is to have a more competitive league. And yes, more competitive by more money being spent on players earlier in their career when they are more valuable. But also, whenever they are able to reach free agency, there's still being an incentive for teams to go after them. By baseball having a salary cap with the luxury tax threshold and owners not going above that because they don't want to pay this penalty, you lose out on the opportunity to make your team better. How many teams, and comment down below if your team has been one of these teams that have been closely associated to a free agent that have then not given them the contract, that have not given them an offer worth their talent and their value. This offseason alone, Carlos Correa, and arguably the best free agent available this season, was offered by his current team, his former team at this point, a 5-year, $164 million deal. It's almost a slap in the face for someone of his caliber. And there's obviously no surprise that he turned it down. Correa, as I said in my previous video about the Yankees' offseason plans and what they should do, in my opinion, will likely get somewhere around $300 million. Now, seeing the fact that Corey Seager, who to me is a lesser shortstop than Correa, got $325 from the Texas Rangers, I believe that my $280 to $320 offer, I believe, is likely very, very low. Correa is the type of shortstop that you can build your franchise, your team around. But the fact is that if teams are no longer incentivized to be competitive, no longer incentivized to spend on players that will make their team better, to make them a competitive team going into the following season, if they're not forced to do so, if they're not forced to spend that money because they can go over the limit, because they have owners that are looking to win, where's the game going to go? As crazy as it may sound, the more money that is spent on the players, the better the game will ultimately be. Having an owner now in the league like Steve Cohen is going to serve as this generation's George Steinbrenner. He's already gone out and acquired Francisco Lindor, gave him a $300 million deal. He's now gone out this offseason and acquired Max Scherzer, Mad Max, and give him a 3-year, $130 million deal. Unheard of. The highest annual average value for any player in Major League Baseball history. When you have owners that are aggressive because they want to win, that's what's good for the sport. Owners that don't care about the penalty of a luxury tax. And if we increase that limit, If we take it from the 206 that was the limit in the 2021 season and bump that way up, bring it up to 220, 230, 250 for the baseline limit before any kind of penalties will incur, you will have more teams that are competitive. Now, yes, that will obviously favor bigger market teams to be able to reach that limit and, if need be, surpass that limit. But when you disincentivize tanking by making a lottery system that is 60% based on your previous season record and 40% based on your market value as well as other mitigating factors, you force teams to have to be competitive. The unions, there's been several different proposals as to how to fix the draft system, whether it be a lottery with every team involved, whether it be a tiering system where if you've been under 500 for X amount of years, you get penalized, and the highest you can get is spot number 25 as opposed to spot number 5. Now you're going to force teams to have to be competitive, to have to be above 500, to push to get to the postseason, because that's where you're going to get your best incentives. When you force the owners to have to spend money, the game's value increases. The players are able to go to teams that otherwise would not have been thought, to force teams to be competitive. At the end of the day, the only way for baseball to end this lockout and to get better, in my opinion, is going to be concession by the owners, because they clearly took advantage the last CBA. And in my opinion, when the players are paid younger, when they're more valuable, when teams are forced to go and spend and push their teams to new limits in terms of payroll on valuable players, when they're forced to pay their stars, their homegrown stars younger, pay them, you're more likely to be able to keep them on your squad longer and be more competitive long term, making places and teams much more attractive to newer free agents when they know that this owner is going to be aggressive to win a championship. But I guess I've ranted on long enough, but let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. I feel that Major League Baseball and the Players Association are going to drag this out tooth and nail for a very long time. Hopefully we get baseball in 2022 the way we're supposed to, but I just have to hold out hope. It's not looking very good. But again, let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Baseball Banter Broadcast. We will be continuing to bring content all off season long. We'll figure out what we're talking about. But thank you for paying attention to this video. And if you have any suggestions for content that you want to see, leave that down in the comment section below as well. Thank you once again. This has been the Baseball Banter Broadcast.